since then, no European explorer came to Africa when he was going back with an African captive. That is why others are of the view that possibly the Portuguese had that in mind before building this castle, simply because they started taking Africans in 1441. 30 years later, they got to Elmina in 1471. 41 years later, that is in 1482, this was built. Situation changed when the Spaniards got to America and the West Indies. They used the Native Americans, called the Amerindians, the Red Indians, to work on sugar, tobacco, cotton plantations. So in 1512, 1515 thereabout, 50 Africans were taken from Spain to Hispaniola, Santo Domingo, now Haiti. And when they were tried, they proved physically. So the demand for our ancestors started coming in. And that marked the beginning of what is then the unfortunate transatlantic slave trade. The transatlantic slave trade is also known as the triangular slave trade simply because the network involves Africa on the eastern side, the New World on the western side, and Europe to the north. And every effort into the study of slave trading, especially what became known as transatlantic slave trade, should carry with it cautions that it deserves on one side and condemnation with no uncertain terms on the other side. Truly, it is the most heinous crime committed against one race and continent to the benefit of other races and other continents. And its effect is being felt today after over 200 years of its abolition. And slavery itself can be defined as a process whereby a person becomes a slave, and a slave being a person who is legally owned by someone else and works as a servant for that person, and as little or no person are free. Putting this into perspective, one could then say that slavery in one form or the other has been with man from time immemorial. Not in Africa, as is being the case, but among the Jewish, the Greek, and every Asian society on the surface of the earth. However, it is clear that it's from Africa and Africa alone that millions of our people were first fought across the Saharan Desert and Atlantic Ocean and scattered all over the world. So the Dutch finally succeeded taking the castle from the Portuguese on the 29th of August, 1637. 1807, the English officially came out to abolish it. The Dutch did the same in 1814, but it never stopped. So from 1814 right on to 1860, we came to have the illegal slave trade in time. So slavery was finally abolished in 1860. But in America, it continued. And they had two reasons for abolishing it. One, on the humanitarian grounds, and two, industrial revolution. When they started making machines, Africans were no more needed to work on their plantations. And on the 6th of April, 1872, the Dutch ceded Israel castle to the British. And that isn't to say that the British never, ever took part. They did, but they used Cape Coast Castle and not Elmina Castle. When the British took over, they turned this one into sub-administrative center. In the World War II, they brought men from all English-speaking West African countries, except Liberia, trained them here, and who fought for them in India and Burma from 1939 to 1945. So the castle standing now is 539 years. And interestingly, it is 10 years older than America. America is 1492, this is 1482. And the whole tour of the castle has been put on a DVD, on a CD. It talks about where they had their last bath at St. Manso, Elmina Township, and the historical buildings in Elmina. The tour that I'm doing with you now, and the tour of the Cape Christmas. There are books. I'll urge you to get a copy. When you get back home, you share with others. It's a very detailed educational material. Get a copy if you are interested. You feel free to ask questions. Let's come up this way. Nigeria, Cameroon, and the rest. They were all brought in here. It took them 1 to 2 months before they arrived because there were no means of transportation. So there were no means of cars, sorry. They had to walk barefooted from the various countries to this place. Some were even left at the expense of wild animals in the forest. When they got here, they were very weak. And as women do have the menstruation, practically they did everything on the floor. That is why you cannot underestimate the stench and the heat over here. And as a result, most of them died. When they died, they were not buried. They were removed and thrown into the ocean for the fish to feed them. They gave them something small to eat just to keep them alive. Some ate, some refused to eat, they preferred to die. And they never had a chance of cleaning their teeth nor bathing. And all these before had doors on them. The only source of ventilation came from that hole. And this same hole is connected to another room called the magazine, where they kept their ammunition. When there's a leakage, the chemicals came straight to this room and worsened a already bad situation. If they were actually in for profit, why did they to me? It doesn't make sense. And they will give you 2 answers. They said, 1, Africans were very strong people, giving them the normal conditions here will make them fight back. And those who could survive through these brutalities were the strong Africans who could work when they get to the new. So in a way, they were trying to eliminate the weaker ones from the stronger ones. But if we all could be sincere for an answer, in the olden days it was very cheap to come by them. It was very, very expensive to get one person into the dungeons. Then they will make sure that the fellow lives under the normal conditions to get the profit, the actual investment that they never care. That is why, to me, the intention of the economy wasn't to trade, but to loot or steal, not peace, but war.
The source of war.
All right, beneath the courtyard is a reservoir. A reservoir built by the Portuguese. They had pipes connected to the river. The pipes over there are not the original ones. So when it rains, it gets in there. And when it is full, it contains 20,000 gallons of water. Malaria and yellow fever. The coastal line was even termed as the white man's grave. And as they stayed longer, they couldn't stay without them. So they were sexually abusing the women here. But the governor, because of his position, anytime he wanted to satisfy his sexual curiosity, up on the balcony he stood, ordered, and the doors were opened for the women to assemble in the courtyard. He looked through and made his choice. The chosen one might have been the dungeons from 1 to 2 months without cleaning her teeth nor bathing. So they even menstruated, yet the governor had paid. So it became the responsibilities of the soldiers to fetch water for her to bath. And after the bathing, she was given something small to eat, and she was dressed and sent to the governor's quarters through the private access door. Let's have a look. Humiliation, the woman was not going to stay there because that wasn't a permanent place. She was then sent back to the dungeons and instances. Some became mistresses and stayed longer up there. When the ships came, those found pregnant were subsequently freed or liberated. But due to the longer from the hinterland, some couldn't trace their way back. And this partly explains why along the coast of our country we have mulattoes, the light colored skin. And also they used to punish the women who refused or resisted rape. They were brought from the dungeons, chained to the ankle, And made the stand, be it rain or shine, from morning till evening, no food, no water. They did that just to put fear into others, so that any time the soldier gets in there, he could easily get one to be raped. On the 3rd of July 2015, we had a program here, the Return of the Captives. So people from different countries came and volunteered. All right, when the ships were ready, the women who had gone through all these conditions were then put back in chains and were brought from the dungeons. Those were a point to the door of no return. Before they had stairs that they descended, but the stairs are no more because we stopped using the reservoir and also constructed a drainage system here so that when it rains, water could easily get out of the castle. These metals were put there just to prevent accident. Today I am here, you are assured of returning. So please don't be afraid.
So quick question. So what this law means is that anybody who gets here is gone. You know?
Anybody who go through this point will find it to the
ship.
No, that's it. Floor that goes round where the dungeons for the men, on top of it where the residences for the soldiers, missionaries, and the merchant. Deputy governor himself. So the important requisite of being how you lived up in those days, and it is still happening today. So when the ships were ready, the men who had gone through all these conditions were then put back in chains and were brought from the dungeons. So this very dungeon here, known as the transit dungeon. In there they were branded. They put metal stamp in the fire. And one was stamped on the forehead, the chest, or the back. They did that to show identification when they get to the new each trader and each trade man. And as a result, most of them got the shock of the branded because they were very, very weak in the dungeon. From there, they moved to the next dungeon before the door of no return. Please, when you reach the first door, you watch your head, you take a step down. To 15 in a row, so you cannot go faster until the chain will let you go. When they were trading gold, not from this point to the other, but when they started the slave trade, they narrowed so that contained one person at a time. In the olden days, the sea was touching the castle, but it has receded. So when the ships came, a smaller boat was brought in to convey them to the big ships before they were taken. They were taken to Brazil, Guyana, Suriname, Liverpool, the Caribbean, and America. Please, seeing the nature of the door shouldn't let you think that tall and fat Africans were not brought here. They were. But due to the treatment that they were subjected to in the dungeons, one could be lean or slim, so he or she will be forced to pass through. I'll give you the chance, just fit into the door, you watch your head, you take pictures, but don't jump. Just like the king. The little servant has a mission statement of the tour of the castle. And as we walk through the dungeons today, as an African, it ought to be in the everlasting record of the suffering of our ancestors. This should compel all of us to pray for all those who died to rest in perfect peace. May those who love to return find their root. May man never be given the chance to commiserate and change man. Every one of us needs to uphold this. So as we go out of the castle, we carry the responsibility that wherever we find ourselves, we try to find a way in this. And the cell that you are in was not for the Africans, it was for the European soldiers, to be precise, the Dutch soldiers who got themselves drunk and misbehaved, or who went out there seeking permission from the authorities. They sent them in there for some hours and prayed, and because it was for them, it was well ventilated. They considered it to be very good because no African was put in there. You all come out and compare the next cell. That has a skull and a crossbone signifying death, which means don't go in there and come out alive. But because I'm here, I'm a very kind guy, very kind guy. You are sure of coming back and let you come. That's when the condemned south for the Africans. We were fighting with the Europeans for them to release them today. When they call them the freedom fighters. They send them in there, no food, no water. Minimum 3 days in Japan. This wall, the other one over there, were constructed by the Dutch to strengthen the walls of the castle. The metals, the police were climbing it up and down for exercise. And at the center, the Portuguese church. Portuguese were Catholics, Dutch were not Catholics, Dutch were Protestants. So they divided the church into two. They used the top as their junior soldiers' mess, where their junior soldiers were eating and drinking, down as hall of trade, where they were buying and selling slaves. When the British did as classrooms, but later a museum, but the Dutch, they went on top of the women's dungeon to build their church, which you have to see very, very soon. And out there was another balcony for the governor where he stood to address the soldiers down here. And beneath the balcony is an iron balustrade. In the middle, you have the W sign that says to be the initials of King Williams. And other historians are portraying the same W to be the logo. Where we are now was where the governor lived at that time. That was bedroom, two living rooms. Over there is washroom, but the floor is wick, so we cannot see it for now. The castle standing now is the oldest the biggest and the largest in the world when we talk of transatlantic slave trade. It was the first important European building ever to be built not in Ghana, but the whole of tropical Africa, Africa south of the Sahara. Along the coast of Ghana alone, over 50 of fault lodges and castles were built, but today 16 of them are still standing. This castle, Cape Coast Castle and Reestablish Castle, which are the former seat of government of Ghana, have been designated by UNESCO as World Heritage Site. The history or the story is not told to open old wounds. Neither is it told to magnify the strength Africans endure as people and yet survive. It is told for all of us to take mean and informed decisions so that collectively we will correct the mistakes of the past by contributing in our own small ways, making sure evils of such nature never again be repeated. My name is Philip. That brings us to the end of the tour. It's my great pleasure. Thank you.